strong.
Chapter 71, Beheaded. The higher-ups of the Chengdu palace came forward, bowed to Zhao Xiang, and said, "Look at Zhao Xiang." Zhao Xiang nodded slightly, and saw the head of Jan's pavilion. Leng Qingfeng looked at Yi Fuxian, and said, "Why are you here? Why is my sister here?" Yi Fuxian did not reply to each other's words, and looked indifferently at the people present. This Master Zhangage looked stiff, which seemed a bit difficult to tell. "She is your sister." I saw the scorn on the girl's face, and said to Yi Fuxian, "I have been my nephew lately, but unfortunately I will not take care of you. If you promise to follow me, I will let him go." "How? You did it?" Yi Fuxian looked at the girl indifferently. "Fuxian, I'm fine." Qin Yi pulled Lei Fuxian's arm and said, "Brother, I have something now." Yi Fuxian looked at Qin Yi, let go of his hand, and then walked towards the girl. There was a cold momentum within him, like extra anger, and the girl looked at him coldly. His eyes were a little scary and he said, "What do you want to do? Won't you fight one more time? I will do it for you." Yi Fuxian said coldly, then quickened his pace and headed straight for the girl. "You're crazy." The girl saw Yi Fuxian rushing in, and the momentum broke, but Yi Fuxian was too fast and rushed towards her in an instant. He raised his fist and crushed it directly. The girl gathered to fight back, but only seeing Yi Fuxian's fist breaking through the defense and pounding on his chest, a loud sound, the girl's body flew directly, smashed the door behind her, and then fell heavily to the ground. Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned. Qin Yi's face immediately turned pale, but he knew that the woman was the princess of the Nandu kingdom, even if the original owner of Chia Fan in Donghaifu had to kneel down when he saw Chia Fan had destroyed his family. Yi Fuxian suddenly hit the princess because of his punch. "Princess! Yi Fuxian, you are arrogant." The people in the martial arts palace also stepped forward. The young girl came out of the door and saw her hands covering her chest. Her eyes were red, as if she was about to cry. She had never been beaten like this, and she had been beaten twice. "Teacher, he bullied me, I will kill him." The Mei girl looked to the left, and the strongman Nanduguo immediately surrounded Yi Fuxian. Left-handed investigator Leng Qingfeng, the owner of the Janj Pavilion, pleaded. "Fuxian." Qin Yi was pale and blocked in front of Yi Fuxian. "Back off." Zhao Xiang hesitated, and everyone around him retreated. "Teacher." The young girl froze and looked at Zhao in confusion. "Not enough trouble," Zhao Xiang said harshly. "Apologies to Fuxian." "I apologize to him." The girl looked at her teacher Zheng Zheng. She is a princess, and was beaten by Yi Fuxian, and she still wants to apologize to the other party. "Are my words useless?" Zhao Xiang looked at the girl seriously and said, "This girl even shouted to kill Yi Fuxian. After that he will know that she is good for him." "Uncle Zhao, I don't need to apologize, I can't afford it." Yi Fuxian said coldly, "I just want to know now, who made my brother-in-law this nephew?" The daughter-general of the mayor of Qingzhou City, Qin Shuai, who offended Chia Fan for the purposes of Qingzhou City, was abolished. Now his only beloved girl is training at Qingzhou Academy, and is actually assigned as a niece. This kind of thing happened in front of him. It is conceivable that Yi Fuxian's anger is at this moment. If it was a girl in front of him, even a princess, he would have written the same thing. "Can't say yet." Zhao Xiang looked at the girl. Seeing Yi Fuxian's extreme grievance when he saw the teacher completely by Yi Fuxian's side, tears seemed to fall. He looked at Yi Fuxian and said, "It was the owner of Qingzhou City who assigned him to take care of my daily life. What kind of anger are you asking me?" Murong Yunshan. Yi Fuxian looked indifferently and looked at the people in the Budo Palace. "So, you treat the descendants of General Qin like this?" The people in Kung Budo Palace lowered their heads and felt a little embarrassed. They also knew that Murong Yunshan was deliberately targeting Qin Shuai's daughter, Qin Yi, but they couldn't do anything about it. Now, it turned out that Yi Fuxian appeared and stood up again. The last time he killed Murong Qiu, he was the one who shot at Qingzhou Zugong alone and killed people on the spot. When the owner of the Lei Xingong Palace left, as he said, Qingzhou Zugong, a sacred place in Qingzhou City, is not as good as a teenager. In less than a year, the boy returned to Qingzhou Academy, and he hit the destiny of a 5-star mage with one hit. What's more, the princess of the Nandu kingdom was hit. Zuo Xiang asked the princess to apologize to him. The world is changing so fast. When the owner of Liang Palace left, he said that when young people move around the world, you will understand what Qingzhou Academy has missed. This sentence seems to have faint signs of fulfillment. Yi Fuxian's growth was too shocking. General Qin. Zhao Yie asked. "Fuxian, is there a story in it?" "General Qin is the patron saint of my Qingzhou City." Yi Fuxian looked to the left, and briefly said about Qin Shuai, Chia Fan, and Murong Yunshan. After listening, the left side view is also amazing. Cold, said, "A mixed group, Murong Yunshan made the charcoal of Qingzhou City life, and is now the owner of the city. Uncle Zhao, I want him to die." Yi Fuxian's eyes showed killing intent. Go and bring people, Zhao Xiang ordered. Yes. Someone was taken away, and the body was empty. Seeing this scene, King Zhu Zugong's heart trembled again. Murong House, is it over? In the Tao Nandu state, his words are enough to make the Qingzhou City Island city family fly, even the city owner. Fusion. Qin Yaimei looked at the boy in front of him. It's less than a year. What did he go through? For him, the princess flies in a box. Brother, all right. Yi Fusion smiled at Qin Yi. Qin Yi nodded and his eyes were red. During this time, he felt the warmth and coldness of many people. Many people ridiculed him. The people who chased after him before were even more proud now. He Xiaofan and Murong Yunshan didn't kill his father enough. Taking the chance of the princess to come over, Murong Yunshan actually assigned him to take care of the princess for his niece, deliberately suppressing her to prevent her growth. Do you owe me an apology? The girl's beautiful eyes looked like endless grievances, and looked at Yi Fusion coldly. Brother, did he embarrass you? Yi Fusion looked at Qin Yidao. Not. Qin Yi shook his head. Therefore, I forgive you. Yi Fusion said to the girl. You. The girl pointed at Yi Fusion, and looked to the left pitifully. Well, how to put it is that you weren't right just yet. If you want to be a nephew when you come out, you have to take a lesson. Great, there are no bad thoughts other than desires, you do not go to your heart, you will have the opportunity to take care of it in the future. I want him to clean it up. The girl felt that everyone was abnormal after the teacher returned from Tianyaroshan. What happened? Uncle Zuo's words are heavy, and I was previously impulsive. Since this matter has nothing to do with the princess, I was indeed wrong. Zhao Xiang gave his face like that. Although Yi Fusion saved Zhao Xiang once at Tianyao Mountain, it was enough. After all, the girl was a princess, and the one on the left was the teacher. Admit it's wrong. The girl bit her lip lightly. It's a big deal to fight with you next time if you want to fight. Yi Fusion looked at him. Who wants to fight with you? The girl rubbed her head and said that the blow only made her really understand, but she couldn't beat her. Zuo Xiang smiled when he saw the girl's appearance. It seemed that the girl's anger had also dissipated. Should the two little men be reconciled? After a while, Murong Yunshan was brought over. He didn't know what happened. When he saw Yi Fusion, his eyes were full of murder. His son Murong Qiu died at the hands of Yi Fusion. Master Rong Yunshan, host of Qingzhou City, has looked to the left and met Her Highness the Princess. Murong Yunshan bowed and worshipped. Fusion, what do you want to do with him? Zhao Xiang looked at each other coldly, and asked Yi Fusion. Cut. Yi Fusion opened his mouth straight. Murong Yunshan searched for a moment, he looked at Zhao Xiang and Yi Fusion. What happened? Cut. Zhao Xiang coldly let out a voice. The people next to Murong Yunshan caught him directly. At this time Murong Yunshan only understood what he was getting into. Zhao Xiang saved his life. What's wrong with his subordinates? Murong Yunshan's face changed greatly, but Zhao Xiang completely ignored him, and he looked at Yi Fusion again. Seeing the murder in the teenager's eyes, he was all cold for a moment. At this moment, he understood that the person who wanted to kill him was not Zhao Xiang, but the young man in front of him, a former disciple of Qingzhou Academy. Yun Murong Yunshan thought of Qiu last fall. The young man stood in the center of the stage for the first time, stubborn and unyielding, but now, the lives of father and son were completely buried in each other's hands. I don't want to. Murong Yunshan roared, and then a roar came out. Murong Yunshan, the lord of Qingzhou City, was beheaded at Qingzhou Academy. Copy Murong's house. Zhao Xiang coldly ordered, and someone immediately did. How about letting General Qin act as the lord of Qingzhou City? Left to Yi Fusion. Thank you, Uncle Zhao. Yi Fusion naturally also had this idea, but it was difficult to ask Zhao Xiang to do something. He was a little surprised. Zhao Xiang treated him unexpectedly well, so he felt something abnormal. In the courtyard, the ordinary words of a group of people turned the entire Qingzhou City into the sky. It didn't take long for the Murong Chamber of Commerce, which had dominated Qingzhou City for so many years, to be destroyed. Qingzhou Weiban wanted to fight back, but when they found out that it was Nandu after the intention of the Minister of State, he completely gave up his resistance, and even many Qingzhou Wei people took the initiative to clean up the Murong family to avoid being liquidated. Furthermore, Qin Shui was asked to leave the mountain in an inexplicable position to take over the position of the ruler of Qingzhou City. Everything happened in a short time, and soon, Qingzhou City was boiling. Qingzhou Zugong was the first to get the news. All the students were shocked for a while. It was said that the leader of all this turned out to be Yi Fusion. Chapter 72. A Life of Fate. I trust you. Qin Yaimei glared at him with a smile and then smiled. You said you were a destiny wizard in school, and I didn't believe you. Now, I believe in whatever you say. The spell is getting bigger and bigger. Yi Fusion smiled proudly. Brother, won't you take care of me? Qin Yi froze, then looked ahead with a smile, and continued walking. A voice came out of his mouth. Yes, sister likes you. There's no point in looking at me. There are too many people chasing me. You're too late to start. Yi Fuxian smiled shallowly. You die. Qin Yi lifted his jade foot and gently kicked Yi Fuxian. His eyes paled at him. At this moment Qin Yi looked very charming and touching. There are Zugong disciples passing by. I saw the two looked at each other disdainfully, showing an envious expression, thinking to myself, Yi Fuxian is Yi Fuxian, still very strong, envious. But now they saw Yi Fuxian. No longer the jealousy and hatred of the past, but a hint of admiration. They already knew what had happened in Qingzhou City. Yi Fuxian is now an existence that they must pay attention to. It might even become a legend of Qingzhou Academy. Not far away, a pure and beautiful young girl stood there quietly. The girl was slender, tall. She had not seen her for more than half a year, and she became beautiful again. Listen, brother, I'm not lying to you. Yi Fuxian smiled at Qin Yi after seeing the girl. That pleases you. Qin Yi sighed silently, and the two walked together. Why didn't you come see me when you came back? Feng Qingshu tried to make herself smile, facing Yi Fuxian. Didn't this come to see you? Yi Fuxian looked at the girl in front of him and smiled. The little girl is even more beautiful. Do you miss me? This guy. Qin Yi looked at him silently, quite narcissistic. Yes. Feng Qingshu smiled and nodded. Qin Yi froze, speechless. You are miserable. You have to keep thinking about it. Yi Fuxian shrugged. Wu Fengqing and Zuixu looked at him, and said, I also want to look outside. It's very dangerous outside. You look so good, how dangerous it is to run out. Yi Fuxian looked at him. Isn't there you? Feng Qingshu seemed to have a lot of courage and looked at him. Don't say, Uncle Feng will deceive you. Yi Fuxian stretched out his hand, then rubbed Feng Qingshu's head. Feng Qingshu choked, and let Yi Fuxian ruffle her long hair. How familiar is that? It's a shame that something went wrong and they couldn't come back anymore. What happened to brother Yusheng? Feng Qingshu asked. For the rest of my life, Yi Fuxian thought of the man and was furious, and said, dead in love, no more brothers. Feng Fengqing and Zumei looked at each other for a while. Did they fall in love for the rest of their lives? Thinking of this, he felt a little sad in his heart. The changes brought by time were really great. Where are you and who are Jiu? Are you together? Feng Qingshu looked at him. How did he escape my palm? When I came, I was still reluctant. Yi Fuxian thought of the bright smile in the fairy's eyes. Although it is still a cynical joke, but seeing that smile, Feng Qingshu is a bit jealous. They are a natural couple. I wish you happiness. Feng Qingshu smiled gently. I will, Yi Fuxian said with a smile. I'm leaving. I'm afraid you miss me a lot. Give me a hug. Feng Qingshu nodded, stepped forward, and hugged Yi Fuxian gently, resting her head slightly on his chest, as if trying to feel the feeling. For a moment, her heart seemed to be hit hard. With tears falling directly, she broke free from Yi Fuxian's embrace, turned and ran away, leaving her face full of tears. Turns out that's the feeling of holding her like that. Yi Fuxian looked at Feng Qingshu's back, and sighed secretly. Qin Yi gave him a white look, then stepped forward and gently hugged him, then parted. Brother, go. Yi Fuxian smiled at Qin Yi and turned around intelligently. In the distance, Zhao Yiping and others were watching there, and when Yi Fuxian came over, the girl next to Zhao Xiang looked like he was not happy, saying, this is a man with a girlfriend, despicable. The left side next to the uncle had a black line on his face. This girl has a big grudge. Uncle Zhao, let's go. Yi Fuxian came out and said. Zhao Xiang nodded, and then the group stepped on the monster. As if feeling something, Yi Fuxian turned his eyes to look at the girl, and said, although I look good, don't you keep looking at me. Shameless, the girl shouted, then leaned her head back without looking at Yi Fuxian. Yi Fuxian was silent. Many monsters in Qingzhou Zugong witnessed their departure, and many great figures in Qingzhou Zugong couldn't calm down for a long time. In the air, behind the monster, left facing Yi Fuxian, Fuxian, what are your plans after returning to Donghai City? Do you want to continue your studies at Donghai Zugong Palace? Do you want to go to Nandu King City? Is there a genius in King Nandu? Yi Fuxian asked. Of course. Zhao Xiang smiled and said, Nandu's best geniuses will finally gather in Wangcheng, including the most prominent people who came out of Donghai City. Is that so? Yi Fuxian smiled. Of course I will go, but not now. Well, maybe you still have a lot to do in Donghai City, and I am not too reluctant, but next year, there will be a big event in Nandu country in the spring. You must come. Zhao Xiang laughed. What is the problem? Yi Fuxian was a bit confused. Do you know the history of the Nandu kingdom? Zhao Xiang asked. I heard my teacher say that once the Nandu kingdom was ruled by the Nandu family, and then the Eastern Phoenix Empire and Yi King united the Eastern Divine Kingdom. The world power was reorganized. The Nandu family was weak and walked down from the throne. Ascending the throne, Yi Fuxian said. Yes, today's royal family name is Luo, to remind themselves every time. The Luo family has not changed the name of their country, and will hold a listening banquet every 10 years, and it will be another 10 years next year. Countless in Tokai Prefecture and Nandu Kingdom are gathered together, and you won't miss it, said Zhao Xiang. Nandao Guo is like a cloud, what am I going to do? Yi Fuxian said. The protagonist of this party is from your generation. The goal is to see the glory of Nandu country's younger generation. The many high achievers in your Donghai Academy will definitely not miss it. Zhao Xiang laughed. Oh, Yi Fuxian nodded his head. The first thing he thought of was his teacher's injury. Since listening to the Wind Feast is so great, if it is appreciated by the king, is it okay to treat the teacher's injury? By the way, Xia Fan is the owner of the youth in Donghai. With his father, I am not good enough to execute him directly. I will deal with him after I return. In order to avoid danger, this order is temporarily put on you and see as you see it. Zhao Xiang issued his order and handed it to Yi Fuxian, and said, but still be careful to kill secretly. Yi Fuxian looked at the prince in Zhao Xiang's hand and did not immediately accept it, even though he needed it. Uncle Zhao. Yi Fuxian was even more confused. Zhao was too good for him. Was it because of Chanyao Mountain that he helped Zhao Xiang stop the blow from Senior Snow Monkey? In fact, he sent the princess into the boxing and flying was an encouragement, but instead of blaming him on the left, he let the princess apologize. Wait a minute, this thing is useless to me, you don't have to mess with my banner to do bad things. Zhao Xiang was joking. Okay. Yi Fuxian nodded to take over. This kind of secret is secretly remembered. This order is very useful to him today. Teacher. The princesses next to Nandukuo were a little jealous of Yi Fuxian. Who is the student on the left? Sun and his team continued all the way and finally returned to Donghai City. Zhao Xiang personally sent Yi Fuxian to Tokai Academy. Fuxian, remember, don't miss the spring of next year. Your stage shouldn't be in Donghai City, Zhao Xiang ordered. Okay Uncle Zhao, I will go back first. Yi Fuxian said, nodded to the left, watching Yi Fuxian enter the East China Sea Academy. Let's go back too. Zhao Xiang said, but at this time, a figure stepped forward, and walked in front of Zhao Xiang. Nandao worshipped and looked at Zhao Xiang. Nandu family? Zhao Xiang asked. Yes, Master Zhao, I have been waiting here for a few days, and the owner of my house wants to ask Master Zhao to help. Nandao bowed. Zhao Xiang groaned for a moment, then nodded, since it is an invitation from brother Nandao, I will go with you. Left phase, please. Nandu politely, then the group set off again, and immediately came to the Nandu family. Tongnan Dujia's family heard of Zhao Xiang's arrival, and the owner personally greeted him and led Zhao Xiang to a courtyard. Besides the two, there was a beautiful young girl who turned out to be a translator. Zhao, this is the junior figure of my Nandu family. Can you help me count his life? The Nandu family said, knowing that not many people are Zhuoxiang astrologers, he is one of them. Okay, the left phase nodded. Interpretation, cooperate with the left phase. Nandujia's family said, he once asked the left phase to count his life, and the left phase refused. Once something is known, it is not good. But Ji, Zhao Xiang thinks it doesn't matter. Yanua Jiu's beauty eyes stared at the figure in front of her. Now that Zhao Xiang has returned safely, the man should have returned, even fooling himself for a day or two. Jiu's body, his life plate was released, and a light enveloped Hua Jiu. After a while, Zhao Xiang put away his life, shocked in his eyes, and looked at Hua Ziyu closely. I think this trip is too crazy. What kind of people did he meet? Her life is so bad. Chapter 73, beaten for the rest of my life. Seeing the serious expression of the left phase, the owner of the Townan Dujia family couldn't help but ask, what is the left phase? Any doubt, can I talk to him alone? Zhao Xiang looked towards the master of the Nandu family. Master Tao Nandu looked calm, but nodded his head, then left here. The gaze of the left hand stared at Wajiayu. The girl, almost 16 or 17 years old, had a beautiful appearance, and compared to the goddess-like character encountered on Tianyao Mountain that day, she was even more impressive. Do you have a suitable marriage? Zhao Ran asked jokingly. Hua Jiu for a moment, then shook her head. Zhuoxiang was silent, as if thinking of something, but when he saw Hua Jiu look at him, Senior, did you bring that person back to Qingzhou City? Ha! Zhao Xiang was a little confused. The man she brought to Qingzhou City. Donghai Zugong. Hua Jiu said again. The left side was stunned, his eyes gradually brightened, and I remembered what a teenager said. I have a boyfriend, and I look better than you. Back to Donghai Zugong. Zhao Xiang nodded with a smile, and Waji's beautiful eyes also showed a smile, relieved. Brother Nandao. Zhao Xiang shouted, and after Master Nandao heard this, he returned, looking at the two doubtfully. Farewell, I saw Zhao said to the head of the Nandao family, and then he turned to Hua Jiu and arched his hand, which is not like the etiquette of the younger generation, but more like respect. The Tongnan Dao masters were stunned and said, why this Zhao Xiang? Ha ha ha, Zhao Xiang laughed, then turned and walked away, and walked in the void. The master of Nandu shouted, Zhao Zhao. The fate of the queen, be the mother of the world. Zhao Xiang's solemn voice floated, and Master Nandu's body stood stiffly in place, Zheng Zheng looking at the laughing figure and leaving. Empress fate. The owner of Tao Nandu felt very uneasy. He thought of many things in an instant, and his talent for flower interpretation was extraordinary, so he wondered whether asking Zhao to measure his life would bring the Nandu family back to its former glory. However, now it seems that Wajiayu has to take another path, the path of the Empress. Hua Xiu also froze. When the owner looked at him, Hua Jiyu said, "I don't believe in fate, and I don't want to do anything. I'm back in the palace," he said, and turned around. When Xi Fusion returned to the East China Sea Academy, he found that the atmosphere of the academy today seemed to be a little different. Many people in the academy were whispering something as if they were talking about something. And when he set foot in Waker Palace, the atmosphere became clearer. Yi Fusion is back, Waker Palace said. He's finally back. Many people seem to have some expectations, such as seeing him so happy, such a treatment, but it makes Yi Fusion feel a sense of flattery. On the way, someone greeted him. "Hello." Coming to the peak of Waker Palace, a beautiful figure shouted at him. Xi Fusion turned his eyes and saw a slender girl standing there. He naturally recognized the girl and was truly impressed. For the first time, a woman was scolded by a woman for not being a man. It's hard to remember. I have a name. Yi Fusion smiled. The beautiful young girl's eyes looked at Yi Fusion and said, "What state are you in now? 5-star glory, don't you still want to fight?" Yi Fusion is a little confused. Are all women fighting madmen? I picked up one not long ago and came again. I won't fight with you, you have to call someone from Zibai Palace and Tianfu Palace. The girl said. Yi Fusion looked confused, and saw that several people came here to see Yi Fusion at this time. What happened? Yi Fusion asked, and returned to the academy today. The atmosphere is a bit abnormal. Brother Yi, we were a bit miserable at Waker Palace recently, said the boy who came. Why? Yi Fusion asked. The disciples of Zibai Palace and Tianfu Palace have been very arrogant recently. They often challenge the disciples from other palaces, and our Waker Palace is the worst, as if they were targeted. The disciples in Zibai Palace and Tianfu Palace are already strong. We at Waker Palace naturally suffer, and the greedy people of the Wolf Palace also fall. They all started to say, Yi Fusion's fame was played in the East China Sea Academy. Therefore, the people in Waker Palace will be looking forward to seeing him again. Yi Fusion frowned. People from Zibai Palace and Tianfu Palace came to visit Yizhang last time, saying that he congratulated Yizhang for accepting his disciple. Now suddenly they are joining forces to suppress Waker Palace. What seems to be hidden behind this? What did the people in Zibai Palace and Tianfu Palace talk to the host of Yi Palace that day? I remember Yi Xiang finding himself after speaking that day, losing his temper, and in a bad mood. Now, it looks like something happened. What about the rest of my life? With her emotions, I'm afraid I can't stand it. Even more angry about this. Someone said, for the rest of my life, a man blocked himself at the gates of Tianfu Palace, swept away many disciples in Tianfu Palace, and sighed, but the people in Tianfu Palace are shameless. There were actually 2 people from the 8-star glorious realm who had joined forces to deal with Master Yu Sheng, and one of them was the second best character in the Tianfu Palace glory realm. With the 5 stars glory realm and the 2 men fighting, the master was defeated by the other party. Yi Fusion's eyes flashed a chill. The rest of his life combat power was crystal clear. Even if he crosses the 3 worlds, there is still no problem, but because the other party is a person above the Tianfu Palace, there is another person who is praised as the country with the second strongest glory. His presence, presumably also a talented demon figure, the 2 together. The rest of his life cannot release the full power of life and soul, and defeat is normal. I understand. Yi Fusion nodded, and then headed to where he was staying. In the courtyard, when Yi Fusion came here, he was shirtless for the rest of his life, exposing a very strong bronze skin. Beside him Yi Qingshuan gave him medicine. I already reached this point when I left. Yi Fusion blinked and walked forward. Yi Qingshuan blushed slightly and looked at Yi Fusion, no seriousness. You can do it for the rest of your life. A 5-star glory will dare to run to the Tianfu Palace to block the door on its own. You must choose the entire Tianfu Palace. Is it okay? Yi Fusion looked at the rest of his life and said, what about the injury? No problem, just a few days. Qingshuan has to take some medicine. Yu Sheng laughed. Do you want to go there again with this treatment? Yi Fusion looked at him with a smile. Yu Qingshuan looked at him. Go to you. Is it protected? Yi Fusion was silent, and said, Qingshuan, Zibai Palace, and Tianfu Palace are crazy. After hearing Yi Fusion's words, Yi Qingshuan looked a little dignified, and said, listen to my father. Zibai Palace and Tianfu Palace are now expanding their desire for power, and they are somewhat displeased with the fact that the 7 palaces are now in charge of the China Sea Academy. Timur. Satisfied, want, change. How did it change? Yi Fusion's eyes narrowed slightly. Donghai Zugong respects them, or the 7 palaces join, Yi Qingshuan said. So let the disciples come out to challenge. Yi Fuxian said. Well, this should be considered an expression of attitude towards Donghai Zugong. Yi Qingshuan nodded. Zibai Palace and Tianfu Palace have always been the strongest in the 7th palace, so the best disciples are generally accepted by their 2 houses. Now, there are very few disciples under the 7 palaces who can compete against Zibai Palace and Tianfu Palace. Xi Yi Fuxian nodded, then turned around and said, I will go. Where are you going? Yi Qingshuan shouted when she saw Yi Fuxian return. It's too much here anyway, I won't interfere with your 2 worlds anymore. Yi Fuxian waved his hand and said, I'm going to my ferry. Yi Qingshuan smiled. This person has always been unscrupulous. After leaving Yi Fuxian, he went in the direction of Zibai Palace. When he left last time, he said that he would be back in 2 days. It's been a few months now. Ferry must be worried about him. Zibai Palace. Yi Fuxian went up the stairs. Many disciples under the door of Zibai Palace saw Yi Fuxian talking. This person came to Zibai Palace. He left with Zhao Xiang that day, and now we go back and run to our Zibai Palace. What? Someone asked. I don't know, this person is very strong, and his left disciple has been crushed, but they are still not as good as my genius, Zhou Mu. It is said that Zhou Mu has now broken through to the 6-star glory realm. The man is not ashamed. Someone smiled. Xi Yi Fuxian ignored the sound of these discussions. The stories of Zibai Palace and Tianfu Palace would be liquidated. Now he just wanted to see the fairies. As he walked all the way, Yi Fuxian came to the top of Zibai Palace, which made him feel strange that he had actually met Zhou Mu. Zhou Zhumu also saw it, looking indifferent, and there was a young man standing beside him, with an extraordinary temperament. Yi Fuxian tilde, this doesn't seem like a place for you to come. Zhou Mu said coldly. I'm looking for my teacher. Yi Fuxian said with a smile. So what? Did Zibai Palace come when you wanted to come? Zhou Mu sneered. Yi Fuxian glanced at Zhou Mu, too lazy to talk nonsense, and walked right next to him, but he saw the youth around Zhou Mu stepped forward, blocked Yi Fuxian, and smiled. I often hear that Master Yi's talent is extraordinary. No manners. Dong. Yi Fuxian looked to the other side and continued to walk. Her clothes were windless and her body was magnificent. However, when he saw the young man on the opposite side with a slight smile, his eyes became almost magical. The next moment, Yi Fuxian only felt that his mental strength seemed to be out of control, and there was a tingling sensation. He paused, raised his head, and seriously looked at the young man standing beside Zhou Mu. Zibai Palace disciple Zhuo King. The young man smiled. Although Brother Yi has good talent, not everyone in the East China Sea Academy is like Jingyang. You must have been taught by King Zhou in the Luo Palace. In Wei Palace, there are several disciples whose strength is not inferior to Master Zhou. Brother Shi has acted so arrogantly, only himself is suffering. Zhuo King had a slight sense of pride when she spoke, but she had the qualifications of pride. She was the first person in the 9-star glory world, the first person in the Zibai Palace glory world, and some even called her the first in the East China Sea Palace realm. People, amazing talent. You're right. Yi Fuxian smiled, then turned and walked away. At the same time, a voice came out. I hope that the disciples in Zibai Palace are really as strong as you say. The reason why he wanted to enter Zibai Palace was because the fairy was worried about him. Since Zibai Palace would not let him, then he had to tell the fairy in other ways. Chapter 74. Former Weiwei Palace General. Fu Yetian returned to the courtyard of Weker Palace, while Yi Qingshuan was still there. Didn't you go to see your girlfriend? Why did you come back? Yi Qingshuan smiled at Yi Fuxian. Yi Fuxian rubbed his brows and said nothing. Qingshuan, what is Zhuo Qing's strength? Yi Fuxian asked. You met Zhuo King. Yi Qingshuan's eyes stagnate. She saw Yi Fuxian's depressed expression, and faintly guessed something. Yes. Yi Fuxian nodded. The leader of the Zibaigong Palace passed down his disciples, and he paid great attention to him. The 9-star glory realm is known as the first person in the field of law in the East China Sea. Yi Qingshuan started. Main ability. Yi Fuxian asked. The spirit is a magician of destiny, with a strange soul and strange powers. He can control others with spiritual power. He is also very good at wood magic, so it is very dangerous, Yi Qingshuan said. Department of Control's Death Master, no wonder. Yi Fuxian's expression flickered. According to Yi Qingshuan, the other party's psychic spells were good at attacking and controlling, while the wood attribute spells were known for their powerful control abilities. Can control people to death. Wu Qiu Palace is good at fighting. Shouldn't the world of glory be without strong figures? Yi Fuxian asked. Yi Qingshuan looked at Yi Fuxian and said, of course, there is talent, and there is also a Fate Master who has 9-star glory and martial arts, but it is still difficult to beat Zhuo King. The first person in the field of law is not a pretense. Understood, Qingshuan. If you release news for me, just say it. Yi Fuxian smiled and said, even if I was defeated in King Luo's palace last time, now the kingdom has made a breakthrough and will challenge Zhou Mu again tomorrow. In order to continue the battle between Master Qin Mo and Master Painting that year, I hope that the disciples from the Donghai Zugong 7 palaces can testify together. After listening to this question, Yi Qingshuan said, didn't you say that you weren't defeated last time? Since they released the news that I lost my last chance, I gave him a full face. Yi Fuxian smiled indifferently. Ji Yixian seemed to understand something. Maimo looked at Yi Fuxian and said, you guys, what a shame. If Zhou Mu was tortured and killed tomorrow, how would he be a man in the future? The rest of my life, Yi Fuxian shouted, staring at him for the rest of his life. How painful, can you still fight? Yi Fuxian asked. Yu Sheng smirked and said, no problem. Tong Yiqingshuan looked at these two people, her eyes flashed, thinking what does Yi Fuxian want to do tomorrow? I will go first, Yiqingshuan said and left. Soon after, news emerged from the Wakir Palace that Yi Fuxian would challenge Zhou Mu again tomorrow, and asked the disciples from the 7 palaces to witness it together. Moreover, this time Yi Fuxian claimed to continue the keen magic painting holy painting battle, which shows that Yi Fuxian is bound to have great confidence in this battle. The location of the challenge, in front of the Zivai Palace. Zhou Mu's realm was higher than Yi Fuxian's, and the battle was dubbed the continuation of the keen demon painting. Their master's reputation was involved in this battle. In this way, Zhou Mu thought it was impossible already. Donghai Zugong was full of excitement, and the news naturally came to Zivai Palace. For a time, this war received great attention, even many big figures were watching in secret. On the morning of the next day, the sun fell on the East China Sea Academy, and the building above the 7 palaces looked majestic and majestic under the sun. Zivai Palace had the potential of the East China Sea School's first palace, beating the other 6 palaces. Against this backdrop, Zivai Palace naturally had a sense of majesty. And today, many people gathered around Zivai Palace in the morning, waiting for the news here, vaguely what to expect. Many years ago, there were 2 legendary geniuses in Zivai Palace, summoned the Master of Painting and Keen Demon, both rare and rare talents, but fell in love with the same woman. But the beauties were wiped out and expelled from Donghai City. Today, after so many years, Qin Mo's disciples and painting students are training at Tokai Academy. He is only slightly different from that year, his painting master who once won the battlefield, his disciples and still in Zivai Palace, and now he is following the main practice of Zivai Palace. The Wukan demon disciple, however, was in the Wakir Palace, following the main practice of the Wakir Palace. It seems that there must be a battle in fate. Today, the Qin Mo disciple, challenging the painting disciple, and on behalf of the master, seems to be swept away. However, it was said that a few months ago in the King Luo mansion, Yi Fuxian's disciples had lost the game. Now even though the realm had improved, Zhou Mu was still thriving. Yi Fuxian, where is his confidence? In the Wakirki Palace, a group of people finally retreated, and the mighty won. These days, Wakir Palace disciples had been targeted by Zivai Palace and Tianfu Palace. They are very sad. Now Yi Fuxian is back, and he is very challenging Zimu Palace disciple Zhou Mu. The Wakir Palace disciples naturally went to help, early in the morning. They waited, seeing Yi Fuxian spontaneously descend to follow, so they gathered into a strong line. Yi Fuxian walked in front of the crowd. He hit the white shirt and carried Gukan behind him, which made him very comfortable. Tangwon had witnessed this battle, seeing Yi Fuxian with such a battle, could not help but be speechless. This person. Challenges from the East China Sea Academy occur from time to time. The battle between the 2 glory disciples had caused such battles and worries. Yi Fuxian was not someone else before. Tangwon did not admire him. Want to see it. The watching crowd went around with the team, and the passers-by also joined in, so that the crowd was more and more impressive, and the ignorant people thought that the 7th Palace War was about to take place. Finally, the mighty team descended to the bottom of Zivai Palace, and many people were waiting here. In Zivai Palace, many disciples looked at Yi Fuxian with indifference, and someone said, a few months ago Zhou Mu was able to defeat him once, and naturally he could defeat him a second time today. The irrelevant disciples of the East China Sea Academy were discussing whether this battle was a chance for Zhou Mu or Yi Fuxian to be more confident. Yi Fuxian sat in front of Zivai Palace, Gukan was in front of him, and soon, a melodious voice came out, and Yi Fuxian really played it carefully. In the Zivai Palace, many large figures looked down and saw a large crowd, looking very indifferent. Yi Fuxian was here to pick something. At this time, a group of figures descended from Zivai Palace, and Zhou Mu was in it. At this time, his eyes were very cold. He stepped into Yi Fuxian step by step, and arrived opposite him. Wu Kan's voice ended suddenly. Yi Fuxian looked at Zhou Mu, and the bright and clear eyes showed a bright smile, said, Yin Fuxian, a disciple of Demon Qin, is a country with 5-star glory. Yi Fuxian came to challenge on behalf of Qin Demon's disciple. In addition to the Gukan in front of him at this time, the place was still in front of Ziweigong, the place where Qin Mo studied in the past, which was self-evident. In this battle, he fought for his master Qin Mo. Pain the holy disciple Zhou Mu, the world of six-star glory, Zhou Mu replied coldly. Please. Yi Fuxian said lightly, then lowered his head, struck the string with 10 fingers, and a tone came out. For a moment, it made the strings of the heart vibrate. Because Zan fight for master, this battle is fought with piano sound spells. This song, the general order. Yi Fuxian uttered a sound, and then the tone continued to float out of the Gukan. Immediately, everyone's mind seemed to present a magnificent picture, as if on the battlefield, an earthquake war drum, the soldiers set out. Zhou Zhumu gathered his body and spirit, and used his finger and pen to paint on the empty space. At this moment, an invisible sound wave instantly descended, hitting right in front of Zhou Mu, interrupting his painting head-on. At the same time, sound waves instantly penetrated into Zhou Mu's mind, causing his mind to tremble. Yi Fuxian's piano sound spell, this time can really affect him. Compared to the previous time, Yi Fuxian's achievements on piano sound spells seem to be very strong. Lots. Zhou Zhumu looked dignified, and saw that his whole body was even more terrifying, his hands stretched out at the same time, and he used them with one heart and two hands to paint the void at the same time. Qi Li Jianxing, stroke into the painting, broke the air to kill Yi Fuxian. However, at this moment Yi Fuxian's body seems to have a potential that doesn't seem to be converging. The piano-sounding drum jar contains a majestic trend, as if the horses are galloping, and a sharp sword comes and shatters. Sharp swords continued to appear, flying furiously at Yi Fuxian, who was sitting there, but as soon as the sharp sword approached his body, it would perish under the general trend. Yi Fuxian is like a general on a battlefield, leading thousands of troops. As the sound of the piano gradually became louder, Yi Fuxian gathered a tremendous storm of piano sounds throughout his body. The sword screamed and the endless sharp sword whistled and killed Yi Fuxian, but people seemed to hear the sound of the battle drum shaking the sky shaking, and the great sword smashing the sword. If the terrible sound of the piano is spelled out, let Yi Fuxian relent again. The monsters painted by Zhou Mu don't know if they can resist it. Everyone faintly felt that Yi Fuxian's piano sound had gathered, and the more they gathered, the stronger they became. Armed with thousands of horses, the general can destroy everything at the behest of a general. Finally, Zhou Mu painted it. He drew a golden ape, his whole body was made of gold, and ran straight to Yi Fuxian. When he stepped, the earth shook. The beast's powerful summons, Yi Fuxian also gave Zhou Mu time to drive him crazy to describe with the aura. Everyone trembled. The golden storm ape stepped into the general situation in front of Yi Fuxian, and the loud sound of crickets came out. At this time, the battlefield changed by the sound of the piano destroyed everything, and the horses ran out, all of which the storm of the piano sound passed. All are about to die. The body of the golden storm ape continues to explode, but like last time, it is still dead towards Yi Fuxian. The ending of this time is a little different. Yi Fuxian continued to pluck the strings, and the endless power rolled over. Just listening to the loud sound, the huge body of the golden storm ape shattered, and turned into an endless aura. Zhou Zhumu's face changed drastically, and his soul appeared behind him, and he continued to paint. Do you really think you won last time? Yi Fuxian said lightly, waved his fingertip, and then stood up. The moment his fingertip hit the rope, as if under the command of a general, the endless piano storm annihilated everything and came to Zhou Mu's body. Previously, where he gave him the opportunity to paint. Chapter 75. The inheritance of the fight is one stick. Yi Fuxian's voice and the sound of the piano fell at the same time, and people's hearts trembled. Zhou Mu, who was painting, looked up, and then he saw the coming Kinyan hurricane. His soul roared, and there was a terrifying spiritual power moving forward, but it was useless. When the spiritual storm came, everything was destroyed. The painting was instantly swallowed, and the aura between heaven and earth became turbulent and restless. Then, Zhou Mu was drowned by Qin Yin's storm, revealing an extremely painful look, like a soldier on the battlefield, and killed him by thousands of troops. Pooh! Blood spurted out, and Zhou Mu's body exploded and fell to the ground fiercely. All of this happened too quickly and off guard. When Yi Fuxian's arrogant words were spoken, he immediately stood up, as if the battle had ended early, so confident. Juran people calmed down, and saw the handsome figure in front of them. The wind blew and the white clothes fluttered. The elegant youth who had quietly touched the piano before was, at this moment, full of sharpness. The Wukan magic painting paints the battle of the saints, winning points. In the past, he painted a holy demon, and now his students have been forcefully destroyed, which is not a close fight as everyone imagines. Moreover, Yi Fuxian's realm was lower than Zhou Mu's, and he was defeated across borders. Also, what does Yi Fuxian's statement mean? There were many rumors in Donghai Zugong before. The disciples of Yi Fuxian's disciples broke through the Luluo palace, were defeated by the disciples of the painter Zhou Mu, and left the wolf howling. This incident once spread, and I am afraid that Yi Fuxian will not explain it. However, at this moment, the facts were in front of everyone, and everyone had to doubt the truth of the rumors, just like the rumors that were released a few months ago. Qiu Zhumu's face paled and eased for a moment. Then he stood up and looked at Yi Fuxian with cold eyes. Only defeat does not determine anything, so what's the point of denying the previous battle? Everyone's eyes bulged. Zhou, this is unwilling to admit defeat. This is ridiculous. Yi Fuxian was sarcastic. Under the rumors, do you really think that you have won me over in King Luo Palace? You see, when I was preparing to end you, King Luo Palace was good at attacking the spirit system. You weren't embarrassed on the spot when the predecessors attacked me silently. Yi Fuxian's words fell suddenly. In the king's palace, the battle between Yi Fuxian and Zhou was attacked by an older character. This is too despicable. It was said that the figures present at that time were the same painting, Lord Luo, and the vice president of Zibai Palace. If this happened, wouldn't these three people be suspects? I said this, Yi Fuxian has to go if he doesn't go. Your blood spurs people on. Zhou's face became even worse when he heard Yi Fuxian's words. He couldn't believe it would happen. You are presumptuous. At this time, a cold drink came out, and saw an old man stepping on Zibai Palace. Han Mo, the deputy palace master of Zibai Palace, was present that day. Yi Fuxian, today you win, and you say crazy words to stigmatize your predecessors, and you don't respect them. Han Mo said coldly. Yi Fuxian looked at Han Mo. Did the old man finally get rid of his fake face? I naturally know that the person who will attack at sunrise will not be a senior. However, if senior does not act, it does not mean that others will not. How can I say that junior is stigmatized? Yi Fuxian said with a smile. The faces of everyone around him changed. This Yi Fuxian changed. If so, that means something. Han Mo heard his words and looked straight at him like a sword, but saw Yi Fuxian looking up and looking at the other side calmly. Now he is very displeased with Zibai Palace, and Zibai Palace feels hypocritical, domineering and indifferent. From agreeing to Mu Yongshuan to hurting the fairies with gossip, to not allowing him to set foot in Zibai Palace, from the tragedy of his teacher wanting to promote the marriage of interests while standing by Hu Sheng's side, and now his ambitions extending to wanting to hold the East China Sea Academy alone. For the rest of his life, although he didn't say anything, in fact, anger had built up in his heart, and it exploded today. Therefore, there was a scene this time. He stood in front of Zibai Palace and challenged Zhou, the general order, as if to vent anger. Lord Luo and Hu Sheng are both prestigious predecessors, and the people present at that time were also people with identities. They might sneak in on an arrogant junior. Han Mo said coldly. Many people were present at the time. I don't know who it was. Yi Fuxian said lightly, saying, however, Tianfu Palace is one of the 7 palaces at Tokai Academy, and 2 people from the 8-star Glory Kingdom joined forces to deal with my Wakur Palace. It is strange that a sneak attack could happen to me. 5-star Glory disciple. This person. Everyone looked at Yi Fuxian. This took everything, and pulled the Tianfu Palace into it. Your disciples in the Wakur Palace are so arrogant and provocative. It is strange that the disciples in the Tianfu Palace should take lessons naturally. Han Mo continued to say coldly, it's you, if you hate your senior today, if you don't say anything, I'm afraid you can't explain it. My disciple in Wakur Palace, when will I tell you what? A cold voice came at this moment. Among the crowd, I saw when Yi Xiang appeared, and he looked at Han Mo indifferently, and said lightly. Han Mo, your deputy director in Zibai Palace, bullied me, a disciple in Wakur Palace. Really strong. I saw Han Mo and Yi appear one after another and face each other, and everyone's heart was shaking, everyone seemed to be in trouble. Master Yigong, haven't you heard your Wakurong disciples shouting at the elders here and slandering the elders? Han Mo replied coldly without being afraid of Yi Xiang. Are you slandering? Yi Xiang asked Yi Fuxian to look at him. Yi Fuxian smiled and said, it is very easy to slander. On that day, I fought with Zhou, and the last blow was repelled by the summoned beast drawn by Zhou, and I was a little out of luck. I can try again today. After all, his eyes fell on Zhou and said lightly, although I have made great progress in the past few months, today I will give you enough time to draw the strongest summoned beast. I will not let go of my soul and attack with martial arts. Pure self. If I can't beat you, I will be slandered. Really crazy. People looked at Yi Fuxian, and let Zhou Mahua summon the strongest beast and unleash the strongest attack. He attacked with pure martial arts and defeated Zhou with one blow. If Zhou is defeated, I am afraid that I will be faceless in the East China Sea Academy. After all, various voices said that Zhou defeated Yi Fuxian, and Zhou himself did not deny it, as if he had agreed. What do you think? Yi Xiang looked at Han Modao. Han's face is calm. Yi Fuxian is so crazy, what can he say? Looking at Zhou. I saw Zhou's face was very gloomy, how embarrassing Yi Fuxian was. Okay, Zhou stepped forward and walked across from Yi Fuxian. The soul was released, and then he squatted on the ground to paint. Yi Yuxian stepped forward and lowered the harp in front of Yi Fuxian, so Yi Fuxian faced Zhou Mu, who was painting, with a very calm look. Seeing Yi Fuxian's calm appearance, it is difficult for everyone to imagine why he has such confidence. He must defeat Zhou Mu with pure martial arts, and let Zhou Mu paint. Nine aura gathered furiously in Zhou Mu's cage. At this moment, she was very serious, and her whole spirit seemed to be concentrated on the painting. Gradually, everyone saw a human-like golden dragon appear on the ground, as if it might suddenly jump into the air. This golden dragon has a terrifying aura. The dragon's scales are all painted, just like a human, and I don't know how strong the defense is. Many people are sweating for Yi Fuxian, only with martial arts. Wu Zhumu ignored everyone's thoughts. He focused his attention on making every detail perfect. As a holy painting disciple, his talent is certainly not in doubt, just because he met Yi Fuxian, and looked a little uncomfortable. Finally, when Zhou Mu fell for the last time, a huge golden dragon surrounded his body, and the light of Zhou Mu's soul was enveloped by a golden dragon, making the dragon's eyes very strange. Staring at Yi Fuxian's opponent. Very strong. People looked at it from a distance, as if they could feel the horror of the golden dragon. Yi Fuxian's expression was as calm as ever, and when he stretched out his hand, a golden aura gathered wildly in the palm. The aura hardened, and turned into an enormous golden stick. He didn't release a spell based on aura, but he condensed the warrior. Martial arts category. When Yi Fuxian waved his palm, a fierce battle suddenly broke out from him, and the battle was astonishing. An invisible tendency gathered in his body, and he continued to climb and became stronger. The image of war must be in harmony with heaven and earth. Wrong, everyone just feels that Yi Fuxian at this moment seems to be the incarnation of a young war god ~. Zhou Zhumu's body moved and stepped forward. The golden dragon seemed to cling to him and followed him. With a loud roar, Zhou Mu growled furiously, and the sacred golden dragon fled, attacking Yi Fuxian with incomparable strength. Dong! Yi Fuxian's body moved, and his footsteps trembled, and the ground shook, and a terrifying world seemed to be gathering on him. Go to death! Zhou Mu came down with a roar, and the golden dragon slammed it down. The golden stick in Yi Fuxian's hand danced, the spirit and spirit merged into the heavens and the earth, and crashed into the golden dragon. Jianxing 9 hit the first blow, opening the world. The golden staff fell on the golden dragon's head, turning it into the sharpest weapon in the world, splitting the dragon's body straight from the middle, all the way forward. Everyone's hearts trembled, and the young war god charged forth, cleaving everything in front of him, even the actual dragon. Boom! The dragon's body exploded, and the golden staff disappeared, but Yi Fuxian's hand grabbed Zhou Mu's neck and lifted him into the air. At this moment, Zhou Mu was embarrassed. Yi Fuxian looked up slightly, looked at Zhou Mu, and said lightly, "Last time, how did you beat me?" Wu Zhumu did not respond and could not respond. Yi Fuxian looked at Han Mo again and said calmly, "The so-called genius in Zibai Palace, but this is the case. After today, there is no longer any dispute between the saints of the keen magic painting, and he is not worthy." The voice fell. Yi Fuxian stretched out his arm and threw Zhou Mu towards Zibai Palace. Chapter 76. Block the door. The zoo people watched as Zhou Mu was thrown in front of Zibai Palace by Yi Fuxian, and looked at the genius who fell to the ground. Zhou Mu, a holy disciple, is now following the main practice of Zibai Palace. However, today's battle was defeated by Yi Fuxian Yikan, and then killed with a stick. Since then, there have been no more disputes between Qin Mo and the saints, and Zhou Mu, the painting disciple, is no longer worthy. This battle can no longer be described as victory or defeat. It is not on a level at all, and it is in a situation where Zhou Mu's realm is high. Disputes between heirs are meaningless. Of course, it's not that Zhou Mu is not strong, but Yi Fuxian is too evil. In Zibai Palace, there was a beautiful woman standing there quietly, with beautiful eyes smiling, all over the land. If the father could see this battle, he would be proud of him. However, other people in Zibai Palace are not handsome, and can even be described as gloomy. Yi Fuxian said, "Zibai Palace genius, but that's all." Zibai Palace was destroyed by the genius who followed the main road of the palace. I saw Yi Fuxian stare at Zibai Hanmo Palace, and said, "I saw him with my predecessors in the Luo Palace battle, but now I still think Zhou Mu has the ability to fight juniors." Hanmo looked at Yi Fuxian, cold eyes in his sharp eyes. This guy, I'm not showing any face. People looked at Yi Fuxian and thought to themselves. He proved with great force that there was indeed someone who attacked him in the Luo Palace. And just now Hanmo accused Yi Fuxian of slandering. It seems a little embarrassing. Some people even wonder if this matter itself will be related to Hanmo. Maybe it was Yi Shidi who deliberately hid his strength that day. Unknown. At this time, a voice came out from the crowd of Zibai Palace. The speaker was Duo King. Yi Fuxian only saw him yesterday because of his obstruction. Yi Fuxian stepped into Zibai Palace to find the interpretation of flowers, which indirectly contributed to today's battle. You're right, maybe I was too despicable, deliberately concealed my strength, and then spread the news that I was not as good as Zhou, and then cursed him. Yi Fuxian smiled. People were speechless. This person is really ironic. Brother Yi was arrogant in front of my Zibai palace, and verbally humiliated me. But what do you want? Zhuo Qing's eyes lit up, looking at Yi Fuxian. Yi Fuxian looked into Zhuo Qing's eyes, then a bright smile appeared on his face, and said, in the past few days, the disciples in the two Zibai Tianfu palaces often challenged me in the Wakir Palace. Yi Fuxian is a member of the Wakir Palace. Look how brilliant the genius of Zibai Palace and Tianfu Palace. As soon as he said this, there was a moment of silence in space. Yi Fuxian came here today, not just to beat Zhou. After fixing the name of his teacher, Qin Mo, he bluntly challenged the two strongest palaces in Tokai Academy. Block the door, challenge. Before I died, I blocked the gate of Tianfu Palace for the rest of my life. Today, Yi Fuxian blocked the gate of Purple Palace. How reckless. Zimo Gong Han Mo's expression became even more gloomy, and with a slight sneer, there was someone blocking Ziwei Gong's gate. Han Mo said coldly, how do you want to fight? The rest of my life, Yi Fuxian shouted. The rest of his life was ready and he was taking a big step. He walked to Yi Fuxian's side a few steps. As the two stood side by side, Donghai Zugong realized that this was the year he entered school. How extraordinary were the two young men whose palace was famous for their wars. It is said that a few days ago, two of the 8-star glory realms in the Tianfu Palace teamed up to defeat my brother. It is so prestigious that Tianfu Palace, one of the 7 palaces, no one can accept it. Yi Fuxian said lightly, saying again Tianfu Palace was involved, and this account for the rest of his life was clearly taken into account. Since he will block the door to challenge the Tianfu Palace, he must be prepared. Now I can't afford to lose. There was a strong man in Tianfu Palace, and he heard Yi Fuxian's words responding indifferently. Yi Fuxian looked to the other side and sneered, since this is the case, I also want to meet some genius figures in the 8-star glory realm of Tianfu Palace. I am both a 5-star glory realm. Tianfu Palace, shouldn't we avoid war? Yi Fuxian and the rest of his life are both 5-star glory world, and the two who beat the rest of the day, 8-star glory world, have no reason to refuse to fight. I saw 2 figures emerge from the crowd in Tianfu Palace. Today, they also came here. I wanted to see them, but I didn't expect to get involved in Yi Fuxian. With this, I have no choice but to finish it. Tianfu Palace is cold in the autumn wind. Jiang Kun Tianfu Palace. The two of them stood weak and calm, they both practiced, both of them had 8-star glory realm, especially Len Kefeng, the sorcerer of destiny, and the fighting ability was very strong. Yu Shengsheng and Yi Fuxian are strong, but after all, the realm is too big, with confidence and cooperation, they will win. I hope you can lose this time. Len Kefeng smiled slightly, seeming to be mocking Yi Fuxian. The words fell, and I saw Len Kefeng standing behind Jiang Kun, and a strong wind appeared on him. This wind not only landed on himself, but also on Jiang Kun in front, then his body emptied. At the same time, Jiang Kun was still standing on the ground, but was covered in wind. Seeing this scene, Yi Fuxian knew that the rest of his life had been unfairly lost. The rest of his life had not yet entered the realm of law and could not fly in the air. For the rest of my life, I help you take revenge. Yi Fuxian said the rest of his life. Okay. The rest of his life nodded and stood in front of Yi Fuxian. Then, a strong wind aura around his entire body gathered, wrapping his body inside. A dark gold armor appeared to cover his entire body faintly. This was his own attribute power, while the wind attribute spell was controlled by Yi Fuxian. A violent force erupted from the body for the rest of his life. Then, he stepped out, and with the shaking of the ground, the rest of his life went to Jiang Kun's body. Yi Fuxian followed behind him, and golden wings appeared. Beautiful. Qi. The terrifying storm turned into a ring-shaped sharp knife, cut from the cold autumn wind for the rest of Yi Fuxian's life and the space made a sharp sound. Bang! For the rest of his life, he stomped heavily on the ground, his body was filled with boundless power, and when he punched, the golden punch broke, and the ring-shaped sharp knife was instantly shattered. At the same time, a terrifying storm erupted from Jiang Kun in front of him. On his body, a terrifying thunder ghost image appeared, turning into a human form, containing a thunderous force of thunder. Feeling the coercion hidden in this incantation, Yi Fuxian communicated a metallic aura, and put a layer of golden armor around the body of the rest of his life. The next moment, a thunderous shadow came immediately, and fell on the body of the rest of his life. With the terrifying power of destruction, the Chen Lei Hao spell can instantly kill people with the power of thunder. When the spell came, the armor on the remnant life was torn apart instantly, and then bombarded on the dark gold body of the remnant life, allowing the lightning light to travel upstream from the body of the remaining life, and shaking the flesh of the remaining life. But his steps didn't stop in the slightest. The cold Kefeng in the void smiled ironically, and the next moment, the Jiang Kun on the ground flew under the wind spell package. The rest of my life, Yu shouted. The two of them seemed to have a tacit understanding. The rest of his life was knocked to the ground, and then his body flew through the air. A strong boost was added to Yu wind spell, making his face as ginger as a gust of wind. I chase. Joke. Len Kefeng showed a touch of disdain. He helped control, did not want to meet Jiang Kun for the rest of his life, even if his strength was very scary, but it would be useless. At this time, a green light appeared on Yu, which was stirred by the wings, flying wildly in the air. In the next moment, a crackling sound came out, and Jiang Kun's footsteps that were flying in the air suddenly stopped. As soon as he looked down, he lowered his head and saw the vines climbing directly on the body, starting at his feet and intertwining into the body. Wood property spell. The person watching the battle trembled. Yu, he is still good at wood properties. Qi Len Kefeng's face also changed. This sudden change interrupted his pace. Just when he wanted to react, he saw that the rest of his life had arrived, and punched Jiang in the past. Jiang Kun is not a wind mage and is not good at flying. This is controlled by Len Kefeng. How to avoid this blow? There was a loud sound, and the faint sound of bones breaking was heard. How strong is the rest of his life? And Jiang Kun spit blood directly. Yu pulled Jiang Kun's body back with the vines directly fell to the ground. The vines floated up, slammed Jiang Kun's body to the ground. Jiang Kun's mouth vomited blood and covered his body. The people of the Heavenly Temple in Tiantian saw this scene, one by one, and their faces were extremely embarrassing. Very cruel. Everyone thought to themselves, Yu was angry for the rest of his life. Two people from the 8 Stars Glory Realm joined hands for the rest of their lives. Obviously, he was furious. Qi Len Kefeng looked a little confused by the scene below, then glanced at Yu and the rest of his life that fell to the ground. His eyes were so cold that he didn't expect that Yu still mastered the wood property that was good at controlling. The genius of the Tianfu Palace in the 8-star victory world. Yu sarcastically, and then threw Jiang Kun's body towards the crowd of Tianfu Palace. Instead of looking over there, he stared into the void, coldly. There is also one. Boom. Len Kefeng exploded into an extremely violent momentum, and a ghost appeared behind him. It was a very powerful monster lion. The monster lion was white and its body was made of stone. This was Len Kefeng's life soul, the stone lion. This kind of life soul has given Len Kefeng a strong earth property talent, and also gave him an extremely terrifying power, so he also practiced martial arts. There is also a talent for the wind attribute. Therefore, Len Kefeng was a destiny mage with the dual attributes of wind, earth and martial arts. You will pay the price. Len Kefeng looked at the two men below, and the earth aura gathered wildly. His body was covered with armor, and a stone spear appeared in his hand. His strength is much stronger than Jiang Kun. The rest of his life whispered. The ending is the same. Yu said indifferently. The golden-winged dapping bird's soul appeared behind him, and the golden wings became brighter instantly. Chapter 77, Liquidation. The cold Len Kefeng looked at the arrogant Yu. Then, the wind and earth attribute aura gathered in front of him, a row of stone spears appeared, and at the same time was wrapped in the power of the wind. Go! Len Kefeng's spear pointed, wind magic wrapped in earth spells attacked Yu and the rest of his life on the ground, covering the sky. Zhu Yusheng stood in front of Yu with a dark golden glow on his body. He screamed and punched his fist in the air. At the same time, the blow was heavy, like a landslide and a tsunami. Go on. Yu behind him said. The wind spell descended on the body of the remnant of life, and then saw the remnant of life rushing to the ground. As soon as the foot stepped on the ground, the body flew in the sky, like lightning, while Yu wind spell with a blessing, he rushed to the sky for a long time. The rest of his life, carrying a strong momentum, and hurtling towards the cold autumn wind. Thousands of fist shadows advanced layer after layer, turned into a general trend, and destroyed everything. This power. Everyone was slightly speechless, and his talent was destined. If he was good at wind spells for the rest of his life, he wouldn't lose another day. Yun Yizhang also showed a satisfied expression as he used tactical attacks for the rest of his life. This person was born to be suitable for practicing various explosive tactics. Stone Guard. Len Kefeng uttered a voice. The boulder body guarded in front of him seemed to be a very powerful defensive spell, but only hearing a roar, the stone guard exploded, and his whole body appeared. Qi Len Kefeng did not back down from him. Although the person in front of him was a personal monster, his victory was high, and his soul gave him a very strong power. A huge stone lion ghost appeared on the body. The spear in Len Kefeng's hand stabbed towards the front. The spearhead and the wind and earth aura rapidly swirled. The fist shadows that came from the bombardment continued to petrify. It was then pounded by the spear. The rest of his life came, like a war god, with an incomparable momentum all over his body, golden thorns on his arms, and his fists exploded directly into the opponent's spear. The spears and fists have not touched, and the remaining life arm continues to be petrified, but it is swallowed up slightly by the dark gold thorns. The body is like a terrifying black hole. He finally watched with shocked gazes from the crowd, and his remaining fist collided with the opponent's stone spear. His fists were louder and scarier than weapons. Bang! With a loud bang, his lifelong fist defense seemed to be broken and bloodstains appeared, but at the same time the cold autumn wind spear exploded directly. The two of them retreated in the air at the same time, their arms trembled for the rest of their lives, and Len Kefeng was not good. The dark energy of the fist passed through the spear into his arm, numbing his arm. Ha! At this time, Len Kefeng suddenly had an unpleasant feeling. Yu Guang swept over, as if he saw a golden light. The eyes of the people below him opened wide, watching the figure that appeared behind Len Kefeng, and the vines appeared, blocking Len Kefeng's retreat, and then rolled towards his body, very quickly. The wood magic spell, Thousand Locks. Why can his 5-star glory kingdom have such a terrible effect? Everyone saw the vines as endless, like terrifying tentacles. The cold autumn wind was wrapped in a hurricane and flew into the air. The terrifying wind spell turned into a terrifying blade. The vines blocking the space were cut off directly. The sound of shrill crickets came out, and the emerald vines seemed to have a golden luster attached to them, making them louder and firmer, but they were still cut off by the wind spell. But the vines are endless, and there are still many tentacles coming to his body, and then he is wrapped around him. For the rest of his life, under the siege of the wind spell, he rushed towards him again, and Len Kefeng's face suddenly changed. He sang loudly and broke free to break the vines that bound his body. Boom! The rest of his fist shattered, and the cold autumn wind defense that was swiftly resisted was instantly broken and then hit his chest. The vine disappeared, but Len Kefeng's body that was shot was caught by the rest of his life, and then the two corpses fell into the sky. The rest of the life grip didn't hit the ground directly, and there was another roar, and the ground instantly cracked open. Len Kefeng twitched like a muddy beach. Yi Yifushan slowly fell to the ground, glanced indifferently at the cold autumn wind, and said, 2 strokes 1, is it cool? Before Tianfu Palace last time, I was beaten by Len Kefeng and Jiang Kun for the rest of my life, and just now, the two worked together to annihilate Len Kefeng. Of course, Jiang Kun was defeated before that. 2 people in the 5-star glory world challenged the 2 strong people in the 8-star glory world in the Tianfu Palace to win. 2 evil spirits. People's hearts trembled darkly, and the strength of the rest of their lives was completely abnormal. Many people previously said that the rest of their lives might be the most martial arts talent in Tokai Zugong. After today's war, I am afraid that no one will dare to deny this. Who could still have such explosive power? No wonder Yi Xiang, the ruler of Waker Palace, chose to accept him as a disciple. Yi Fushan is also a demon, and the Destiny Mage and the Golden Winged Dapping Bird give him the Golden Wind attributes. He is also a Kinyan Mage. Now that he has revealed the talent of the Wood attribute, plus the practice of martial arts, it is too flexible. One wonders, is he hiding other attribute talents? In Zibai Palace, perhaps only the talent of a talented girl could surpass him. But he was afraid he wouldn't shoot. Except for entries, he never shoots, and rarely even comes out. Only when Yu Yongxuan and the gossip came out did she personally come out to clarify. Tianfu Palace has lost all its face at this time. Everyone thought in his heart, and saw that the rest of his life grabbed Kefeng's cold body and threw him into the crowd of Tianfu Palace. The body was still so direct and arrogant, it was almost embarrassing. In the battle in front of the Tianfu Palace that day, he was also very unhappy. The battle was very pitiful, the other party was able to fly in the air, and it was even difficult for him to take the opportunity to directly clash with the other party. Today, his breath is bad. Tianfu Palace's 8-star glory genius also has this power, so don't be shy in the East China Sea Academy. Yi Fushan said softly, how ugly the Tianfu Palace disciples look. Everyone heard Yi Fushan's words and was speechless. Today, this person slammed his face. Whether it was Zibai Palace or Tianfu Palace, he had no face at all. He first defeated Zhou Mu strongly, and then helped the rest of his life with Len Kefeng and Jiang Kun. What will he do next? At this point, Yi Fushan took a few steps to the side, and looked at Zibai Palace again, smiling. Yesterday, I came to Zibai Palace to find my girlfriend. Zhuo King brother refused to block the road, saying Zibai Palace genius Ru Yun, I am not as good as Zhou Mu's strength, so I came to teach him today. Zhou Mu has been taught today, but I am a little disappointed. I don't know what other geniuses of Zibai Palace are. 5-star glory realm, I don't know palace disciples the self-proclaimed Zibai in the first house of Edokai Academy, but there are geniuses in the same neighborhood who challenge me. People in Zibai Palace are embarrassed one by one, fighting with 2 monsters in this world. Maybe that person can give it a try, but the people above Zibai Palace know something. It seems that he may never go against Yi Fushan. The audience was silent for a while, thinking that this person was truly shameless. The people of the 8-star kingdom have been defeated by the 2 of you. Now let the people in Zibai Palace fight. Sent to be abused. However, Yi Weitian's words could not be refuted by Zibai Palace. You think you are a genius like a cloud, and you think that the seventh house is the first. Also, Yi Fuxian's girlfriend, at Zibai Palace. What is going on? If it doesn't work, I will accept the genius of the six-star glory world. Yi Fuxian looked at the people in Zibai Palace without saying a word, and continued to laugh. Hanmo has a gloomy face, the glory of 6 stars. Zhou Mu has tried it, a stick. What about 7-star glory? Yi Fuxian continued, Brother Zhuo King is not boasting that Zibai Palace is as talented as yesterday, why today? Everyone looked at Zhuo King, and saw that the handsome Zhuo King was currently dark, as if squeezing a smile. Zhuo King said, Since Yi Shi has furiously challenged my disciples in Zibai Palace, why do you need to determine the realm? Brother Zhuo means, I have to abandon the kingdom, fight in the 4 or 5 kingdoms, even the kingdom of law. Yi Fuxian smiled and said, It is the Zibai Palace disciples who challenged me in Wakir Palace these days. Zhuo King brother might as well challenge me to the martial arts palace. Zhuo King didn't say anything. The people in Zibai Palace stared at Yi Fuxian coldly, all confused. Let no one dare to challenge the 2 kingdoms. In the future, the disciples in the Zibai Palace must not dare to choose my weak disciples in the Wakir Palace to challenge. Yi Fuxian saw that the people in Zibai Palace did not speak, and satirically said, Everyone. It became clear that Yi Fuxian said these things, perhaps to make Zibai Palace faceless to deal with Wakir Palace disciples in the future. I know Brother Yi has extraordinary talent. In the past, I once said that I wanted to see some things, so despite the 8-star glory, I still walked out. Of course. Now, at this moment, I saw a figure that came out, handsome, but he is a talented disciple of Zibai Palace. He came to Yi Fuxian and said, Mu Yongxuan, a disciple of Zibai Palace, 8-star glory. Yu Shengsheng heard the name of another step out. There was a violent potential in his body. The rest of my life, Yi Fuxian shouted. The rest of his life stopped. I'm coming. Yi Fuxian said lightly, nodded for the rest of his life, and retreated from the battlefield. Yi Fuxian looked at Mu Yongxuan. An ironic smile appeared on his face. Not only are you naughty, I am ashamed to train with someone like you at the East China Sea Academy. You. Mu Yongxuan dropped the camouflage directly. Her face was very gloomy. Yi Fuxian stood there quietly, with an impulsive power permeating his body, and there was no white wind in his body automatically. Since you have the face to stand up for, then you created rumors and harmed my boyfriend's account, and solved it today. Yi Fuxian said lightly. The voice fell, and the space became silent. Chapter 78, Face in Hand. Mu Yongxuan, Yi Fuxian's girlfriend, was injured in the rumors. Yi Fuxian also said that his girlfriend was in Zibai Palace. I remember the rumors that caused the debate at Tokai Academy, and everyone stared at Yi Fuxian closely. Several months ago, in Zibai Palace, a fairy-like figure descended from Zibai Palace and announced to Donghai Zugong that there was no relationship between Mu Yongxuan and him. Mu Yongxuan is not worthy of her. People are equal. Have they ever thought, is there really such an extraordinary figure in Tokaizu Palace? Today, Yi Fuxian is challenging the door under Zibai Palace, and he is very arrogant. Coupled with the sentence that was just mentioned to Mu Yongxuan, it was easy to put the 2 things together. The heart trembled, and their eyes slowly changed, looking at the direction of Zibai Palace. I saw that behind the many disciples of Zibai Palace, there was a high place, and a beautiful figure was standing there quietly. Left and independent, as if where he is, everyone will lose color. At this time, the beautiful figure moved, and he descended step by step, and the disciples of Zibai Palace gave up, staring at this beautiful figure, with a hint of hope in their hearts, but they also understood that after all it was a dream that was not could ever be touched. I walked down the stairs, Hua Jiu came out, and came to the battlefield. He passed Mu Yongxuan. Mu Yongxuan looked side by side with Qian's shadow. There was a faint desire in the depths of his eyes. This amazing girl, every time she saw her, she would let her suddenly. Her heart changed, however, in her eyes. She did not exist at all, and even humiliated her in front of Tokai Zugong's people. Chi Hua Jiu stood before Yi Fuxian. Meimo looked at Yi Fuxian for a moment. You fought with him. Then, Han Mo's face was very gloomy, and he said coldly, but Hua Xiu ignored him completely, as if he ignored him, and still looked at the young man in front of him. Guy, this is very impulsive. You see me like this? Yi Fuxian looked at Hua Jiu and shrugged. What did you say? Hua Jiu's clear voice came out. Although his tone seemed angry, it made people feel a bit coquettish, and looking at his angry look, he looked at Yi Fuxian. However, in the beautiful eyes, there seems to be a rich emotion. At this time, many people feel heartbroken. Although there are rumors in Donghai Zugong, they are rumors. However, at this moment, they saw their fairy Donghai Zugong with their own eyes, and they talked to Yi Fuxian like a young girl on earth, revealing such eyes, and can imagine the feelings in their hearts. A word or a glance seems to make people feel the feeling of falling in love, and it is exciting. Unfortunately, the voice and look are not facing them, but facing Yi Fuxian. I'm not saying whether I will announce to Donghai Zugong, you look so good, and are remembered every day. I am very sad. Today I take this opportunity to tell them properly that you are mine and make them envious. Go, Yi Fuxian said with a smile. Many faces around him were dark. When they heard Yi Fuxian's words, they had the urge to beat Yi Fuxian. These bastards are on purpose, their goddess in a dream. Stupid, Hua Jiu Maimu was still glaring at him, said strangely. Then, he continued to move forward, reached Yi Fuxian's side, and gently stretched out his hand. Then, under countless gazes, he actively took Yi Fuxian's hand and announced to everyone that their relationship. I looked at Hua Jiu's face to the side, looked up slightly, looked at Yi Fuxian's face, and on his face, a bright smile bloomed, so beautiful. So, are you satisfied? Hua Jiu smiled gently. Since Yi Fuxian chose not to hide anymore, then he was willing to face it, no matter what he experienced in the future, holding hands like this time. Sun Zuoxiang said that he has the destiny of the queen, and he does not believe in fate. Even if there is such a fate, he will change his life. I saw the smile on the girl's face in front of me, and the gentle words. Yi Fuxian's smile was very warm, the most beautiful bow in the world. But this is also the case, no matter how beautiful the world's beauty is, how can she make the fairy smile? Even if he saw a woman who was more powerful than a fairy in Tianya Ocean, but what about it? The godly father said that the woman wanted to be the mother of the world. The crown of the world. Well, very satisfied. Yi Fuxian nodded with a smile. This feeling is very cool. Hey, you've had enough. Finally someone couldn't help but scream. It was too sad. I feel like I've lost love, and my heart hurts. Someone covered his chest and said depressed. Pooh. The direction of the crowd in Waker Palace, Yi Qingshuan, who stood with the rest of his life, smiled. This person, don't let others live, this show of kindness, is too much. However, it is very beautiful. Yi Qingshuan understood that even though they were holding hands with a smile, there might be great pressure behind this relationship, yet they faced each other with a smile. I thought of this. Yi Qingshuan also stretched out his hand and touched his arm beside him. I looked at him for the rest of my life and asked, what's wrong? Yi Qingshuan looked up, Mei Mei looked at him, scratched his head for the rest of his life, and seemed confused by the girl's eyes, so angry that Yi Qingshuan stepped on him. The rest of his life flashed, and then he turned his eyes and looked ahead. When Yi Qingshuan was angry, her little hand was tightly held by a thick and strong hand. For a moment, his heart seemed to melt. Smile like a flower. It turned out that this person was incomprehensible. It seemed that he had learned a lot with Yi Fuxian. In the direction of Zibai Palace, there was a beautiful figure quietly looking at the two holding hands. A blessed smile appeared in her beautiful eyes. This is Shu Yuyan. He was the person who knew Waji the most in Zibai Palace. Only he knows how his language was towards the boy. He ignored all the Tianzhou characters in Zibai Palace. She would be nervous about her every move in the Donghai Zoo Palace, an almost perfect fairy, but as long as she was mentioned, she would be like a stupid girl in love. However, the faces of the Zibai Palace besides him were not so handsome. Today, Yi Fuxian is here to beat him, harass Zhou Mu, and humiliate Zibai Palace. By this time, they had taken it. Goddess Wei Gong, Hua Jiu Donghai Zugong's first beauty, could imagine their hatred for Yi Fuxian. Wild. An anachronistic voice sounded at this time. Mu Yongxuan's expression was gloomy, even a little hesitant. It's no secret that he admires Hua Ziyu in Zibai Palace, because when Han Mo walks on his behalf for the rumors, he doesn't refuse, and the feelings between people are very subtle. When there are more people, he will pay attention to each other. Maybe it can come true, but what he did not expect is that Hua Ziyu has long been in love with Yi Fuxian, and the relationship is very deep, so he will only be very disgusted by rumors like that. I then have everything that happened then. The goddess who once admired him in public to humiliate him and let him go, but he persisted. But at this time, when he saw Wajiayu intimately with Yi Fuxian in front of him, he finally couldn't stand it, and the evil thoughts in his heart broke, and he said two words that shouldn't be said. Even if Yi Fuxian came to Zibai Palace to provoke, but at least it was true, and said these two words from the mouth of Zibai Palace genius Mu Yongxuan, and it was still a whisper to Zibai Palace genius girl. And, it's offensive. The indifferent and angry eyes looked at Mu Yongxuan, with deep disdain in his eyes, although they were a little envious of Yi Fuxian. When Hua Ziyu stood with him, he felt both. At the time of feeling, many people still bless him deeply. Mu Yongxuan's character revealed no doubt. As Yi Fuxian said, it is very embarrassing to train with him in the East China Sea Academy. Yan Waji's face changed and he was humiliated by such words. It was difficult for any woman to give birth, let alone a woman like Waji. Yi Fuxian's heart was slightly stinging, cold, but still holding back anger at Hua Ziyu gently. Leave it to me. Hua Jiu nodded slightly, then took a few steps back. When Yi Fuxian's gaze looked at Mu Yongxuan there was a terrible coldness in his eyes, and there was a killing feeling. Yi Fuxian, a disciple of Waker Palace, 5-star glory, challenged Mu Yongxuan. In this battle, let alone life or death, war. Yi Fuxian spoke coldly, and everyone only felt a burst of heartbeat. Yi Fuxian even launched a life and death battle. Crazy. People said secretly in their hearts, but if they had a lover like Huajiayu, they would never allow others to be harassed like this. No wonder Yi Fuxian would be so angry. Niu Yongxuan clenched her fists. Her expression was embarrassing. Yi Fuxian's 5-star glory situation dared to launch a life and death battle against him. Yi Fuxian and the rest of his life joined forces to defeat the 2 powerful 8-star strongmen, but according to him, Yi Fuxian is mainly an assistant, and really strong people are still alive. Yi Fuxian, who is in 5-star glory state, dares to fight. Why is he Niu Yongxuan, Zibai Palace's 8-star glory genius? Then you are ready to die. Niu Yongxuan's face was extremely cold, and her voice dropped. A terrifying golden storm blew through his body. Then, Niu Yongxuan's eyes looked golden and sharp. Pole. Yi Fuxian's soul bloomed, a golden-winged rock bird appeared, and it was very beautiful. At the same time, a terrifying storm aura gathered and turned into a golden staff. He was held in the palm of his hand and many people could not bear to look at the golden stick in his hand. Secretly secretive, Zhou Mu was crushed by Yi Fuxian before, and is still being attacked by pure martial arts. At this time, Yi Fuxian was waging a life and death battle against Niu Yongxuan, who was clearly more than the previous strength. I saw Yi Fuxian smack with wings behind him, and suddenly his body slowly emptied. The wind aura attached to the body and condensed into a spell. He could use the golden winged rock bird to blow away souls. He would also have a wind attribute spell, and his speed would naturally be even more terrifying. Chapter 79. I took his life. Countless eyes stared at the suspended Yi Fuxian. At this moment, she was too beautiful. Yi Fuxian is handsome, and now a golden winged rock has appeared behind him, giving birth to wings, as if bathed in the light of God, his hand holding a golden staff, full of power. Perhaps, he at full strength could actually cross the 3 realms and fight against the genius figure Niu Yongxuan of Zibai Palace. Many people think secretly. Niu Yongxuan's golden eyes stared at Yi Fuxian coldly. Then, his life also appeared, and it was a strange golden demon cat. Demon cat's eyes are even stranger than Niu Yongxuan's, making people feel uncomfortable when looking at other people. A golden storm gathered in front of Niu Yongxuan and turned into a slender golden sword, whistling around Niu Yongxuan's body. This was not an ordinary metal spell, but an extremely incomparable metallic aura. Strong control. Yun Muxuan's main occupation is the Destiny Mage of the spiritual department. His spiritual power controls the metal aura more than ordinary people. Even the metal mage in the noble realm of the ordinary 9 stars has less control over the golden aura. With this strong control, Niu Yongxuan did not even practice martial arts. He doesn't need to have metal attack and defense. Niu Yongxuan's strength is clearly beyond the cold autumn wind. Can Yi Fuxian fight it? Seeing the release of Niu Yongxuan's power, many people did not believe in Yi Fuxian anymore. The metal storm was too terrifying. Now, the slender golden sword surrounding it was controlled by Niu Yongxuan like a toy. In the direction of Zibai Palace, Hanmo looked at all of this coldly. Yi Fuxian's talent naturally looked into his eyes, but because he wanted to stand on the opposite side of Zibai Palace, he had to get rid of him, and he took the initiative to bring out life and death. War. This of course saves a lot of trouble. You are begging to die, I have to meet you. Niu Yongxuan said coldly. Her voice dropped, and the slender sharp sword revolved around her body whistling to kill Yi Fuxian. Wanjian let out, far stronger than the sword painted by Zhou Mu. However, the realms of the two are very different. The golden staff in Yi Fuxian's hand danced, stepped out of the void, and a powerful force exploded. Then, he saw his wings tremble behind him, and headed straight for the sky like golden lightning. Niu Yongxuan snorted coldly, her golden eyes looked up into the air, and suddenly the sharp sword turned to chase and kill Yi Fuxian. Even though he didn't practice wind, he wasn't afraid of magicians who could fly. Yi Fuxian's speed was extremely fast, and his body was extremely beautiful, like a truly golden winged rock. He spun rapidly in the air, but the golden sword chased after him. At the same time, Yi Fuxian's gathering momentum grew stronger and stronger, an equally terrifying golden storm followed his body, and the golden stick in his hand grew thicker and thicker. When are you going to run away? Niu Yongxuan said coldly. As soon as his voice fell, he saw Yi Fuxian's figure appear right above him. Fei Xuan's body no longer dodged, but was holding a large golden staff. Slashing straight into the sky, at this moment, the void seemed to tremble, and the world changed its color. The crowd seemed to be unable to see Yi Fuxian's figure. In their eyes, there was only the shadow of a stick that swept across the earth and swept over everything. Endless sharp swords cut through the air. However, in the shadow of the stick, everything must be removed. The sharp sword split open directly. Niu Yongxuan looked up and saw Yi Fuxian being killed with endless power. As a result, the eyes of the demon cat behind him became even more demonic. The extremely violent golden aura turned into a huge sword. Niu Yongxuan's eyes shone with a terrifying golden glow, and she shouted, "Kill!" The words fell, and the golden sword hit the void, trying to destroy the void. Bang! A loud bang, the stick and the sword collided together, and saw that the golden sword that killed the void was instantly shattered, and a very violent one might shake Mu Yongxuan's body, but Yi Fuxian's attack was also blocked and stopped in the void. However, the power is still there. The golden wings flashed, Yi Fuxian's body spun, and suddenly, the general trend rose again, surpassing the previous one. Sensing this scene, Mu Yongxuan's gaze changed again. He stretched out his hand, the endless golden storm swept over, turned into a brilliant golden pattern, blocked in front of him. At the same time, the endless golden silk thread cut through the space and continued to kill. For Yi Fuxian, offense and defense are one. Yi Fuxian's appearance was as indifferent as ever. His wings flickered, his body turned, his footsteps stepped forward into the void, and then turned into lightning. He then slid towards Mu Yongxuan again, and thousands of silk wounds killed him. Layers of golden light curtain, airtight. Finally, Yi Fuxian's body fell, and the second attack of Tianxing came out, sweeping everything away. Bang! The golden pattern exploded instantly, and an incomparable one might blow on Mu Yongxuan's body, causing her body to slide backwards uncontrollably. At this moment, everyone's eyes had changed, showing a shocked expression. What kind of martial arts combat technique is this? Ignoring everything, sweeping the world, as if sticking out, all the enemies that stand in front of them must be destroyed and no one is allowed to exist. Fuxian at this moment really transformed into a young war god. The golden storm that was blowing around his body trembled. After the first two blows, the momentum had not decayed, but continued to increase to become stronger. I feel the amount of violence Yi Fuxian has gathered at this moment. The people in Zibai Palace had changed their faces and were no longer confident. Even Han Mo's face became a little embarrassed. Yi Fuxian's second stick is definitely stronger than the first, and he is still gaining momentum. If there is a stronger one, Mu Yongxuan can't stop it. Oh, Yi Fuxian, who has the potential to move forward again, is even more terrifying in power. Mu Yongxuan's face was pale, she shouted angrily, the endless metallic aura turned into a golden spell, and a huge and ancient bell came to her. Her body was enveloped in it. This time she did not attack again, but chose defense completely. Yi Fuxian's body rushed quickly, and then he was bombarded for the third time without hesitation. When the golden stick hit the ancient clock, the bell rang, followed by a cracking sound, and then, by Mu Yongxuan with a scream, the stick pierced through the golden bell and hit his body directly, knocking him to the ground, his body sliding on the ground, blood spit in his mouth, and there was no blood on his face. Obviously, he had lost his fighting power. This. Everyone trembled inside. Too cruel. The young figure, angry at the crown, turned into a young war god, and the momentum seemed to kill anyone who stood in front of him. It's strong. At this time, there was burning blood on the bodies of many people. At this time, many people remembered Hua Jiu's words. He said that Mu Yongxuan was not worthy of being compared to the people he liked. Many people asked, is there such a good person in Donghai Zugong? Perhaps this was because Hua Jiu liked each other. But at this time, when Hua Jiu's favorite person was facing Mu Yongxuan and she crushed each other with unstoppable power in the three realms, Talon understood that there was no exaggeration in Hua Jiu's words. Mu Yongxuan, whether its talent or strength, is not worthy of being compared to Yi Fuxian. Perhaps there is only a peerless character who can be qualified to stand with a fairy character like Wajiayu. The moment Yi Fuxian stepped towards Mu Yongxuan, many people in Zibai Palace changed their faces. This battle, but a life and death battle, Mu Yongxuan agreed. Mu Yongxuan supported the ground and looked at Yi Fuxian. The corners of his mouth were blood-colored. He looked very staring, looked at Yi Fuxian and said, this is Zibai Palace, how dare you kill? Kneel down and apologize, I will save you my life. Yi Fuxian looked at Mu Yongxuan coldly. Mu Yongxuan's face is very careless. Let her kneel down and apologize. Are you arrogant enough? I saw Han Mo step forward, a mighty might be released, watching Yi Fuxian coldly. This is a life and death battle, did the predecessors see it? Yi Fuxian looked at Han Mo. This is Zibai Palace. Han Mo said coldly. Yi Fuxian suddenly smiled, ironically, if Mu Yongxuan wins, you will definitely want me to die. Han Mo did not speak, this is natural. When Mu Yongxuan saw Master advancing, a cold smile appeared in her eyes. You can't kill me, Yi Fuxian, do you think there will be a good ending with that bitch? Yi Fuxian looked at him. Mu Yongxuan's smile was a little crazy. Obviously, today's defeat had greatly stimulated him. He lowered his voice and said, that slut looks really pretty, and it will definitely be reduced to someone else's toy. You seek death. The palm was a little hard. Yi Fuxian held the stick tightly, and then raised his hand as if it would fall at any moment. Teacher, Mu Yongxuan looked back at Han Mo, only to see Han Mo take another step forward, and said coldly, Yi Fuxian, do you want to die? I looked at Yi Fuxian's left hand in his hand, issued an ancient command, and then threw it at Han Mo. Han Mo frowned, picked it up, then his face suddenly changed, and he whispered, Sang Ling. Zhao Xiang said, seeing Lingru see it, this battle is a life and death battle, and Donghai Zugong's 7th palace witnessed it. Now, his life, I take. Looking horrified, looking at the fallen golden stick. At this moment, many thoughts flashed in his mind. Opened his mouth, wanted to say something, but there was no chance. Bang! A voice came out, and the golden stick fell and hit Mu Yongxuan's head. Chapter 80, Plan. Between the purple and micro palaces, the space is dead. Countless eyes stared at the figure of Yi Fuxian and Mu Yongxuan lying motionless in front of him. The stick only hit Mu Yongxuan's body, it also seemed to hit the hearts of the crowd, making their hearts tremble. Mu Yongxuan, a disciple of Zibai Palace, disciple of Han Mo, was beheaded and killed on the spot in front of Zibai Palace. Although this is a life and death battle, this is Zibai Palace, and Mu Yongxuan, a genius in Zibai Palace, and Han Mo, deputy palace master, bequeathed his disciples. Yi Fuxian's stick actually dared to crush it, holding the order and cutting. Han Mo raised his head and looked at Yi Fuxian. When he got the order, he was surprised and a little hesitant. Then his disciples were beheaded by Yi Fuxian. It is conceivable that Han Mo was angry at that time. Yi Fuxian's intent to kill has reached the extreme, but Yi Fuxian has a relative in his hands. After all, the Donghai Learning Academy is just a learning palace in one place. For no reason, naturally there is no courage to openly deal with those on the left. There are supporters from the left side, so in Donghai Zugong, Yi Fuxian, you are fine. Han Mo said coldly, and threw the order back to Yi Fuxian. The senior asked himself, who wants to kill whom? Yi Fuxian responded indifferently, and Han Mo and Mu Yongxuan naturally felt that killing intent. Even so, he did not kill Mu Yongxuan's heart until Mu Yongxuan insulted Hua Ji with vicious words. Clean up, Han Mo said coldly, then turned around and walked towards Zibai Palace. The people in Zibai Palace stepped forward and took Mu Yongxuan away. Many people looked at Yi Fuxian coldly, and then left. Today, Zibai Palace has lost all face. In the battle of life and death, the genius Mu Yongxuan was beheaded by Yi Fuxian on the spot. The people in the other palaces looked at Yi Fuxian. This man is insane, his talent is terrifying. Moreover, he went with Zhao Xiang last time and was liked by Zhao Xiang. He even gave him orders. If you only talk about the talent in the East China Sea Academy, I am afraid that few people can compare it. The natural and bold remnant accounted as one, and the genius girl of Zibai Wajiayu Palace is considered one. However, one of the two people entered the school together with him. Brother, and seems to be listening to him, the other is his lover. At this point, Hua Ji walked to Yi Fuxian's side, gently held his hand. Yi Fuxian's eyes turned, and he saw Hua Ji's beautiful eyes looking at him, and whispered, why so impulsive? Naturally understood that Yi Fuxian was really angry for him and cut off Mu Yongxuan. Although he hated Mu Yongxuan very much, he also understood that doing so would offend Zi Weitian to Zibai Palace. Someone dares to tell you this in the future, I will still be very impulsive. Yi Fuxian smiled. Hua Ji lowered her head slightly. Her heart was warm, and she whispered softly, I will go to the teacher to say goodbye, and I will not practice in Zibai Palace. Now, Yi Fuxian nodded gently. After that. Aren't you there? Hua Ji smiled and looked at Yi Fuxian. Okay, Yi Fuxian laughed. Then I will go first. Hua Ji said softly. Yi Fuxian nodded, and then let go of his hand. Hua Ji went to Zibai Palace, and said goodbye to the teacher, because her lover is already with Zibai Palace opposition. Then, of course, he no longer lives. Yi Fuxian turned around and walked towards Wakur Palace. At this time, the disciples of the Wakur Palace looked at Yi Fuxian with some respect. Today Yi Fuxian is considered a bad breath for Wakur Palace. Gongzhu, I will give you trouble. Yi Fuxian went to Yi Xiang and said, if you kill, you don't have to think about anything. If you don't kill him, he will also want to kill you. As you said, if you defeat this battle, Han Mo will definitely want you to die. Can't you? Yi Xiang said weakly, so instead of letting him slowly think about you, it's no big deal for you to choose directly. Yi Fuxian looked at Yi Xiang in shock. The palace master spoke very well this time. Come on. Yi Xiang lifted his feet and left this side. Yi Fuxian followed him, and the disciples of Wakur Palace also followed one after another. The crowd of spectators saw that they had left, and they all dispersed. Still restless in my heart. They have a vague feeling that what might happen in the East China Sea Palace. It seems that the conflict between Zibai Palace and Yi Fuxian is not a sudden outbreak, but there is already a strong enmity. Only today they know how strong the young talent is. If it doesn't die, it will become a great tool in the future. On the way back to Wakur Palace, Yi Xiang, Yi Fuxian, the rest of his life, and Yi Qingxuan were at the forefront. I saw Yi Xiang faintly say, the purpose of your challenge in Zibai Palace today is not pure. Yi Fuxian looked at Yi Xiang, and then heard Yi Xiang continue. Greatly defeated the painter Zhou Mu, blocked the door of Zibai Palace, exposed the Fu, and then showed his attitude towards Hua Ziyu, which proved to Nandu. Is his family visible? Yi Fuxian's eyes bulged, and just listened to Yi Xiang continue. With the talent you showed today and the order, it is indeed enough for the Nandu family to measure it. Gongzhu, I don't want to. Yi Fuxian shook his head with a bitter smile. Since Zibai Palace already doubted his relationship with Wajiayu, the Nandu family should be the same. Since it is necessary to take it sooner or later, it will be stated brightly. Yi Fuxian looked forward and said, I didn't expect the Nandu family to accept it, but I hope to win some time for the fairy for myself. In a few years, regardless of whether the Nandu family agrees, I don't need to care. You are sure? Yi Xiang said faintly. There is another purpose. Did you take the initiative to explain? Yi Fuxian looked at Yi Xiang. Wouldn't he be so shrewd? Yi Xiang looked at him with a sneer, and said, since Zhao Xiang gave you an order, you can see his attitude towards you. He must have said that you should go to Wangcheng, so you are not afraid to cause trouble in front of Zibai Palace. I will go because of me. Take the butt, so I will just make a big fuss. Anyway, before I left, I was angry at Waker Palace. Yi Fuxian looked at Yi Xiang silently. Ginger is still hot. When are you leaving? Yi Xiang asked. Zhao Zhao asked me to participate in the banquet in the spring of next year, Yi Fuxian said. Let me stay in Waker Palace for today's practice. Don't go, I will personally send you next year. Yi Xiang looked forward. Yi Fuxian looked at the serious side face, but a smile appeared on his face, thinking that although the old man likes to keep his face flat, but after more contact, he will find it really cute. However, they don't know that things often don't go as expected. Ziyu Waker Palace. After Yi Fuxian returned for a while, Wajiayu also came here. Seeing the figure that appeared in the courtyard, Yi Fuxian showed a gentle smile. Chi Hua Jiyu's mood seemed a little low, and he walked gently to Yi Fuxian. Maimu looked at him. What is it? Yi Fuxian asked softly. Ziehua Jiyu Yu stretched out his hand and held Yi Fuxian's hand, his voice low. I have someone else after leaving school. Stupid girl, the guild is fine. Yi Fuxian said softly, thinking about the old man in Zibai Palace. His heart was a little sour. The old man's smile was so kind, he could feel the prince looking at him, and Hua Jiyu's eyes were full of love. Even though she is old, she still shows elegance. The old man didn't seem to like Zibai Palace at the moment. If he lived there alone, he must be very lonely. Yes. Hua Jiyu's eyes were bloodshot and she looked at Yi Fuxian and said, in the future, will we have the opportunity to meet with teachers often? Of course it's good. I still have to learn the piano with Shigong. Yi Fuxian said with a smile, but he also knows that he is afraid that the opportunity will be less and less, especially Shigong's old people are so old, I don't know how many more years to life. But this was an old man who taught him general discipline and a lot of other beautiful piano music. You too, don't leave me. Hua Jiyu Meizu looks at Yi Fuxian affectionately. Won't you leave me? When did I leave you? Yi Fuxian said depressed. That is you. Hua Jiyu looked at Yi Fuxian. Yi Fuxian sighed silently, and it was really unreasonable. So, are you planning to follow me in the future? Yi Fuxian's eyes brightened slightly. You still want to let me go? Hua Jiyu looked at him with a jerk. That's sad. There seems to be no way to stalk flowers in the future. Yi Fuxian felt depressed. You. Hua Jiyu stomped her foot, then lifted her jade foot and kicked Yi Fuxian gently. Why do women like this trick? Yi Fuxian mumbled, but just said it seemed to find something wrong, and immediately shut up. Then, Yi Fuxian found that Hua Jiyu was watching him with a smile and said, is there anyone else? No, I thought King Xuan would play the rest of her life like this. Yi Fuxian pointed at two figures not far away. I have not. Yi Qingshuan saw Hua Jiyu looking at him, and a smile appeared on this side. Yi Fuxian looked at Yi Qingshuan with a dark face, don't you think? Looking back, Yi Fuxian saw Hua Jiyu's beautiful eyes were still looking at him, couldn't help but look up at the sky, and whispered, the weather is very nice today, perfect for lunch. He said, turn and walk towards the room. Hua Jiyu blinked, followed by his steps, and saw Yi Fuxian looking at him, together. Hua Jiyu's footsteps paused for a moment. When Yi Fuxian showed a proud smile, he suddenly smiled and said, okay. He said, he also picked up his steps and went up. This time, it was Yi Fuxian's turn to blink and blink. Happiness comes too suddenly.